three things. I'm going to start and tell a little bit about myself. I'm going to give you some inspiration, hopefully, and then I'm going to leave you with some advice. But first, a little interactive. Like, how many of you guys are going to be active duty? Just give me a little show of hands. There's a lot of you guys. How about National Guard? Good amount. Reserve? It's generally what I see. Least amount of reservists. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. We all have one mission, right? I've served in all three. I enjoyed my time in all three. I've never had an assignment I didn't like. Essentially, it's what you make of it. Your circumstances are what they are, but make the best of what you got. You've made an important choice to be in the military. Some of these things that you might have already heard, only 33% of Americans are eligible for service. Eliminated because height, weight restrictions, drug use, mental health conditions. That aperture is constricting every day. Only 2% of that population actually choose to serve. And then even less of that, 2% of them are officers like yourselves. So be very proud of the choices you've made in being future leaders. You know, the mission of the Army is to fight and win the nation's wars. And at the end of the day, that's what you're here for. And be proud of that commitment. Your job is especially important because in our nation's darkest day, right, when the enemies decide to employ deplorable means and cover us with slime, right, you'll be here to clean us up, literally. And don't let the other branches of service give you crap for being chemical officers, right? Because they will. But if we get covered in slime, they'll be begging for your help. They really will. What you do is important, and be proud of that. You know, I got a lot of message. I'll say be proud a lot, but at the end of the day, we all have a purpose, and we all rely on each other. And that's important, right? And that's what makes this Army good, is each other. That brings me to, you know, the advice part. I told you it was going to be quick. Take your job seriously. You never know when it'll be your turn. As a second lieutenant, I ended up a commander of a 280-person company in theater. So I'm sure your instructors and your cadre have told you that could happen to you. Well, it happened to me. It can happen. So you need to be ready. As a battalion commander, my priorities were improve lethality, improve survivability, and increase MOS proficiency. These are the things that'll ensure that you, and most importantly, your soldiers are ready. The last thing you want to do is to have to write a letter home about one of your soldiers to their family members. Next is don't love yourself too much. You're probably not the smartest person in the room. I know I'm not here, and you know, rank has no respect. So respect everybody. Be the leader that you would want leading you. So, you know, transformational leader with empathy and humility. It's very important. When you're out there, I found that most people's intent are good. And when there's problems, it's generally communication. Communication can be fixed. And so those are the things that we need to continually work on. How we portray our message, how we receive it, and improve that with your soldiers. Intent is dealt with in a completely different way. If there's malice intent, well, there's UCMJ for that, right? But generally, people want to do a good job. They want to be led. They want to be held accountable, right? So when I say empathy and humility, that doesn't mean being nice or being likable. It is your job to hold your soldiers accountable. They want direction. They want to be held accountable, right? Value your NCO Corps. They're here to help you. Don't forget, I was enlisted for 10 years. I made it to E5. As a new second lieutenant, the best person to get advice from is probably the first sergeant. So, because most of your problems are going to be enlisted with the enlisted ranks. And last, it's okay to make mistakes. What's more important is how you battle through those mistakes. Your mistakes don't define you. What defines you is how you make it through and what you become because of those mistakes, even the biggest mistakes. And you think the world's gonna end, that's not it. It's how you climb back. Don't let people bring you down. I could continue all day here, right, with lessons learned and everything, but I promise to make this quick. If you ever need any advice, I love giving it. Just ask Second Lieutenant Ruby. It's free. Do with you what you want. Get my number from her. And it's free cheese, right? Non-judgmental. I'm here to help. There's nothing better at this point in my career than working with the Army's future leaders, right? So that's all I got for you today. Skadoosh. Thank you.
Thank you for your words of wisdom for the future leaders of our Corps and Army. For the last 17 weeks, Captains Nick Walsh and Larry Schultz served as the small group instructors for Class 0226. They are proud of these young officers. Please give them a round of applause for their efforts and dedication in preparing these lieutenants for the challenges ahead. The Distinguished Honor Graduate Award is presented to the graduate that best demonstrates the whole soldier concept and warrior ethos. This award is based on academic achievement, written and oral assignments, physical readiness, and the approval of the small group leaders. The recipient of the Distinguished Honor Graduate for CBRN Basic Officer Leaders Course 0226 is Second Lieutenant Arthur Berge, who will return to his unit in Minnesota. The International Distinguished Honor Graduate Award is presented to the officer that best demonstrates the whole soldier concept and warrior ethos. This award is based on academic achievement, written and oral assignments, physical readiness, and the approval of the small group leaders. The recipient of the International Distinguished Honor Graduate for CBRN Basic Officer Leaders Course 0226 is Captain Alexander Bazangai, returning to his unit in Mongolia. Major General Gerald G. Watson Leadership Award is presented to the graduate that best demonstrates the whole soldier concept and warrior ethos. The awardee exemplifies the core leadership values of Major General Gerald G. Watson, lives the Army values, and sets the example for their peers. The recipient of the Major General Gerald G. Watson Leadership Award and honor graduate for CBRN Basic Officer Leaders Course 0226, Second Lieutenant Ian Bird, who is reporting to Fort Hood, Texas. The Lieutenant General Leslie C. Smith Fitness Excellence Award is presented to the graduate who excels in all aspects of holistic fitness, to include the physical, nutritional, mental, spiritual, and sleep dimensions. The award commemorates the leadership contributions Lieutenant General Leslie C. Smith provided to the Chemical Corps. The recipient of Lieutenant General Leslie C. Smith Fitness Excellence Award and honor graduate for CBRN Basic Officer Leaders Course 0226 is Second Lieutenant Angel Saber, who is returning to her unit in Georgia. Officers who graduate in the top 10% of each class are designated honor graduates. The following officers have earned this distinction: Second Lieutenant Hudhaifa Haisa, returning to Georgia. Please join me in a round of applause for the awardees and honor graduates. I now present the remaining outstanding graduates and their future assignments. Second Lieutenant Joshua Anderson, returning to North Carolina. Second Lieutenant Juventino Barahona, reporting to Fort Polk, Louisiana. Second Lieutenant, returning to Hawaii. Second Lieutenant Kevin Blaze, returning to Illinois. Second Lieutenant Omar Cerruti, reporting to Fort Hood, Texas. Second Lieutenant Sarah Chatfield, reporting to Fort Stewart, Georgia. Second Lieutenant Abdullah Chu, reporting to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Second Lieutenant Annalise Christie, reporting to Fort Riley, Kansas. Second Lieutenant Nathaniel Conklin, returning to Hawaii. Second Lieutenant Samantha Cresci, reporting to Fort Carson, Colorado. Second Lieutenant Herbert Cupp, returning to Tennessee. Second Lieutenant Walter Dixon, reporting to Fort Polk, Louisiana. Second Lieutenant Wyatt Fisker, reporting to Fort Bliss, Texas. Second Lieutenant Sristy Gomez, returning to Pennsylvania. Second Lieutenant Tyler Hartsock, reporting to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Fort Riley, Kansas. Second Lieutenant Mario Hernandez, returning to South Carolina. Second Lieutenant Lauren Prusa, reporting to Fort Stewart, Georgia. Second Lieutenant Roberto Impro, returning to Maryland. Second Lieutenant Kayla Infante, reporting to Fort Hood, Texas. Second Lieutenant Justin Jones, reporting to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Second Lieutenant Lyric McKelvey, reporting to Fort Bliss, Texas. Second Lieutenant Jose Munoz, reporting to Joint Base Lewis McChord, Washington. Second Lieutenant Gian Makila, returning to Arkansas. Second Lieutenant Moses O'Hemming, returning to Virginia. Second Lieutenant Keith Overman, returning to Wisconsin. Second Lieutenant Jesus Pena, returning to California. Second Lieutenant Jonathan Regalado, returning to Florida. Second Lieutenant Xavier Rogacion, reporting to Fort Hood, Texas. Second Lieutenant Samuel Rosa, reporting to Fort Hood, Texas. Second Lieutenant Adriana Ruby, returning to Washington. Second Lieutenant Michael Sanders, reporting to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Second Lieutenant Jesus Santos, reporting to Grafenberg, Germany. Second Lieutenant Letia Singletary, reporting to Fort Stewart, Georgia. Second Lieutenant Stephen Sun Yang, returning to Louisiana. Second Lieutenant Carson Stalka, reporting to Fort Stewart, Georgia. Second Lieutenant Carlos Testa Rivera, reporting to Fort Hood, Texas. Second Lieutenant Justin Toyama, returning to Hawaii. Second Lieutenant Samuel West, reporting to Fort Carson, Colorado. Second Lieutenant Alexandria White, reporting to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Second Lieutenant Elijah Wright, reporting to Fort Riley, Kansas. Please join me in a round of applause for the graduates of CBRN based off the Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our ceremony. I would like to thank everyone for attending. The distinguished honor graduate, Second Lieutenant Berge, will now dismiss the class.
CBOLC class 0226.